You ever get that feeling that we're just repeating history, but with better technology and on a much, much grander scale? Well, today we're going to look at our modern world through the lens of one of the most powerful civilizations to ever exist, ancient Rome. We're going to hold up the Roman mirror and see what's staring back at us.
So let's just ask the question right out of the gate. Are we just living in a bigger, more complicated version of Rome? Because when you really start to dig into the numbers, the parallels between our world and theirs are, well, they're kind of startling. And in some cases, honestly, they're deeply uncomfortable.
Okay, to really get this, let's start with a sense of scale. At its absolute peak, the Roman Empire controlled over a fifth of the world's entire population. Think about that. That's a larger share of humanity than modern China has today. This wasn't just some regional power. This was the global heavyweight of its time.
And that's exactly why we're calling this the Roman mirror. What happens when our own civilization takes a long, hard look into it?
You know, it really all starts with the city. Rome was the very first city in all of human history to pack 1 million people into one place. They basically wrote the blueprint for high-density urban life, the complex infrastructure, the social challenges, the mass entertainment. It's a formula that pretty much defines our world today.
And that blueprint for a city? Well, it became the model for something way, way bigger, the superpower. Rome really did lay all the groundwork, but the scale we've copied it on today is, well, it's almost unimaginable. So 1 million people. For the ancient world, that number was just staggering. It made Rome the undisputed center of gravity for politics, culture, and power. But just watch what happens when that blueprint gets scaled up for today.
And bam, we get modern Tokyo with 37 million people. That leap right there shows you the sheer, mind-bending, exponential scale of modern life. Rome's model wasn't just copied, it was amplified beyond anything a Roman could have possibly conceived of.
And look, this isn't just about a few giant cities. In the Roman Empire, about 1 in 5 people lived in an urban area. Today, it's well over half of the entire global population. We have become a fundamentally urban species, taking Rome's great experiment to its absolute conclusion.
But here's where it gets really fascinating. Some things haven't really scaled up at all. Get this, both the Roman Empire and the modern United States dedicate a surprisingly similar percentage of their population to the military. It's like there's a timeless formula for projecting power, an echo of imperial structure that's lasted for millennia.
But the Roman mirror doesn't just show us similarities. It also shows us where the reflection gets warped and distorted. When we look at the real engines of an economy, wealth, labor, and technology, that's where we find some of the most surprising and, frankly, uncomfortable comparisons.
So in Rome, the wealthiest 1% controlled about a quarter of everything. That's a huge concentration of resources at the very top, right? And you'd hope, that we've made some progress on that front.
Well, today's top 1% controls nearly 40% of all global wealth. Let that just sink in for a moment. For all our talk of progress, wealth inequality has significantly worse now than it was in the Roman Empire. The gap hasn't gotten smaller, it's actually gotten much, much wider.
Now, the Roman economy was fueled in large part by slave labor, making up maybe 1/3 of the entire population. It was the energy that built the empire. Today, we're building our own new engine, automation and AI. We have created a new kind of non-human workforce to drive our own economic output.
And how about this little fact? Roman concrete, the kind they used to build the Pantheon, has lasted for over 2,000 years. Most of our modern concrete, it might need major repairs after just 100. It's a pretty humbling reminder that new doesn't always mean better.
And all this leads us to the final, and maybe the most ominous part of the reflection. Because if we share some of Rome's greatest strengths, it stands to reason we might also share some of its greatest vulnerabilities. Let's look at the echoes of its decline.
So, to pay for endless wars and other massive expenses, Roman emperors steadily debased their currency. Their main silver coin, the denarius, went from being nearly pure silver in the 1st century to containing less than 5% silver just a couple of centuries later. Now, this wasn't just some dusty old monetary issue. This currency debasement triggered runaway inflation, completely destroying people's savings and their faith in the whole system. It was a massive, flashing red light that the empire's economic and political foundations were cracking under the pressure.
At the very same time, Rome's legendary military was stretched incredibly thin, trying to defend thousands of miles of frontier. It's the classic case of imperial overstretch. And this mirrors the modern strategic challenge of global policing.
where resources get spread across a vast, complex world, making the entire system fragile.
So, we've looked into the Roman mirror. What does this reflection actually tell us about our future? Where do we go from here?
Well, the reflection is pretty clear, isn't it? We've taken their urban blueprint and scaled it to incredible new heights. But we've also amplified their problems, creating a wealth gap that's even more extreme. We face the same strategic challenges that come with being a superpower. And most importantly, we might just share the same deep fragility in our complex systems that eventually cause theirs to crumble. But here is the single most important difference between us and them. The Romans, they never saw their own reflection. They had no other history, no other fallen empire to learn from. We do. So the question isn't whether we are Rome. The real question is, are we willing to learn from what we see in the mirror?